approved a bill that would admit Washington, D.C. as the 51st state. On Thursday, they voted on a bill that would admit the district as the 51st state. The legislation passed with a vote of 216 to 208 with no Republican votes in favor. Just a little bit quick piece of information. The Democrats have 222, but they only have 216, but the reason is a lot of these seats are open. For example, in Ohio's 11th congressional, 11th, am I right? Yep. Marcia Fudge was nominated to be the United States Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, and her seat is open. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine has scheduled the special election, but not yet. In New Mexico, Deb Haaland, the Secretary of the Interior, first Native American individual to have that role, her seat is also open, and that's why the numbers didn't match up. But for Democrats, the bill's advocates, it's a civil rights issue. The district has a higher population than both Wyoming and Vermont. Eleanor Holmes Norton is the only representation of the district. She is a delegate representing the district, but she does not have a vote. She can only speak on the floor and sponsor amendments. According to IRS data, it has more in federal taxes than 21 states and more per capita. That means each individual pays more taxes than any other state. The district is also diverse with a black plurality. HR 51 would create the Douglas Commonwealth. If you're more interested in that and how it would work while still following the constitutional rule of a federal district less than 10 square miles, you should check out my other video on DC statehood. It's really good. I strongly suggest you take a look at it. They approved it last year when they had a bigger majority, but it did not get a vote in the Senate under then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican of Kentucky. There is a lot of controversy over DC statehood, but there is something interesting I want to talk about. There is the 23rd Amendment to the Constitution. That gives the federal district. Let's just search it up. 23rd Amendment. So basically, if you check exactly what it reads, I'm not sure if you can say it, but if you just look at the text, maybe that should be helpful. A number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives in Congress to which the district be entitled if it were a state, but an event no more than the least populous state. Now, if this plan goes through, all of D.C. would become a state, except for the White House and a little bit of the Capitol and Supreme Court. But the 23rd Amendment still keeps that in place. 3 electoral votes are still there for the federal district. So while the Douglas Commonwealth would get 3 electoral votes, because based on population, that's how much they get, the federal district, which is the White House, the Capitol, would have 3 electoral votes. But there are very few residents in that place. The presidential family being the only ones I can think of. And when you look at it that way, that just dwarfs the whole Wyoming, California unfair popular vote thing of disproportionate representation, because one family has 3 electoral votes. If Joe Biden's running for re-election, he and Joe can just cast votes for themselves, and the majority of the votes coming out of the White House and that area are Democratic, which they will, it's 3 electoral votes. There's also some alternative proposals really brought forward by Republicans. Retrocession is the biggest example. Washington, D.C. originally was a part of Alexandria, Virginia. It included Alexandria and Arlington, Virginia, as well as what it currently is, but it retroceded Arlington and Alexandria back to Virginia. And many proponents of this option are suggesting that D.C. remain a federal district, but the rest of it go back to Maryland. Others are also suggesting giving them a proper representative in the House, but no representation in the Senate. Exactly. But would leave the Senate representation unresolved. If we look at the current Senate, that's where they have a problem. There are 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans. Let's just fix that. There. So, you need all Democrats to agree to it. First of all, already we have some questions. Jon Tester of Montana, Angus King, independent of Maine, who caucuses with the Democrats, Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, and Joe Manchin of West Virginia. If you put a little pressure on these guys, some of them would cave. Angus King probably might. Jon Tester might. But these two, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, are the holdouts. If you apply a lot of pressure on Sinema, she might just cave in. But Joe Manchin is the Democrats' number one problem. You need to obviously compromise with him or give him a lot to get him to go along with it. And why is that? Because if D.C. became a state like it is in this map, which I made this little dot D.C., Democrats would have 52. And right now, even if they're 52 to 50, if Joe Manchin defects, say to the Democrats' latest proposal, it would be 51 for the Republicans and 51 for the Democrats. Then Kamala Harris can tie break in favor of the Democrats. That means Joe Manchin doesn't matter anymore, and he does not support that. He might support giving D.C. one senator, because then it's just 51. Like, I can just show you here. 1. And let's just fill that for the Democrats. Boom. And Democrats have a narrow majority, but if Joe Manchin quits, then they lose. But D.C. Statehood would give it 2, and that's what Joe Manchin does not like. I do plan to make a video on his leverage and the reason he does not want it, but that's just one important fact. And even if Joe Manchin actually says yes, I'm being right here, Democrats still have no chance of getting this through unless they eliminate the filibuster, because you need 60 senators to agree. And looking at D.C. voting history, right there. Every single election, it has voted Democratic. From Lyndon B. Johnson to Hubert Humphrey to George McGovern to Jimmy Carter to Walter Mondale to Michael Dukakis to Bill Clinton to Al Gore to John Kerry to Barack Obama to Hillary Clinton to Joe Biden. And if you look at this, they always voted Democratic. I mean, look at this number. 90% for Obama. 4% for Donald Trump. 4%. That's the most liberal state in the place in the country. Wyoming, the most conservative, had about 25 to 30 points for Biden. D.C. has 4 points. This is a safe Democratic state for the next 30 to 50 years. And that's giving Democrats an extra more Senate seats. Why do Democrats don't want it? Joe Manchin doesn't want it. Kyrsten Sinema because don't want it because it takes away their power. But Democrats across the country love it because it gives them so much advantage in the playing field for the Senate. Because coming into 2022, if they pass this, they would have 52 Democrats to 50 Republicans. The GOP would have to get back to 52. That means making a net of 2 flips, a net gain of 2 seats. And that's near impossible looking at the electoral map. Then, we also need to look at how it would help the Democrats. Look at this map. In the future, if we just look at 2022, one of the Georgia seats might turn red. New Hampshire might turn red. But then Democrats are just going to win the open seat in Pennsylvania. It goes blue. And then it's a tie, so Kamala Harris would tie break in favor of the Democrats. So regardless of the situation, by going through with D.C. statehood, Democrats would win. Even in Arizona, for example, if Republicans win in Arizona, in Georgia, in New Hampshire, then Democrats are still going to win in Pennsylvania. They have a good chance of winning in Wisconsin, a reasonable chance in Ohio, and in North Carolina. And even if that doesn't go through, Republicans are going to have a 1-seat majority. If Susan Collins defects on something, if Lisa Murkowski defects on something, the Republicans are sunk. And that's why Democrats want DC statehood so bad. But in the Senate, it's going to stall because Joe Manchin is going to say no. Thank you for watching the video. You can just see right here, I have added the video for DC statehood. You can check it out. Thank you for watching, and please hit the subscribe button. Tane Politic.